This is Dateline News and Conversation. My guest tonight, Endre Timo from Hungary. He is, I'm not sure if he's the coordinator, the president of a Hungarian peace organization, but tonight we will talk about not just what's happened in Hungary over the past week or so in terms of aid to Ukraine, in terms of its relationship with Brussels. We'll get to that. But the biggest story right now in the West and around the world is the interview that Tucker Carlson had with Vladimir Putin 2 nights ago. Endre, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much for your invitation. I salute your public, and I beg your pardon for my bad English. Correct me if necessary.
I won't have to. You're perfectly understandable.
You will see.
I want to ask you, first of all, about your impressions of the interview that the American journalist Tucker Carlson had with President Vladimir Putin. What are your thoughts as you have seen or read that transcript?
Yes, I have read it. It is an interesting interview. I think that the most important for me and for the Hungarian public also is the consideration of Putin to not considering enemy the United States. He told that, of course, the Washington leadership is not a friendship leadership of Russia, but he is distinguishing between the political leadership and the deep state, of course, of the United States and the people of America. So for me, it is the most important consideration because he more than once, they repeated the willingness of Russia to live in peace and to continue on the path of the dialogue if the adversary is ready to do the same. The second issue, the second topic that impressed me was the sensibility for the minority problem in Ukraine. He spoke about the minority of Hungary in Transcarpathia, and he responded to a question of Tucker Carlson that he knows that the Hungarians living in Western Ukraine want to return to Hungary and want to belong to Hungary with their land. As you know, Hungary has lost the territory of Transcarpathia, of course, Transylvania, Vojvodina, and the upper zone belonging now to Slovakia after World War I with the Trianon imposed pact. And for this reason, for me, this consideration of the minority will, of the minority sensibility and the self-determination of the minorities in Ukraine is very important. You know, Trianon is a very big problem, more than 100 years in Hungary. People is very sensibilized for the losing of these territories. But we will see what will happen. What I can see can tell you that the ambassador of Russia, Yevgeny Stanislavov, in Budapest, last October, in a conference presentation in the peace community of Hungary, has told that after the end of the so-called special military operation of Russia in Ukraine, the question of the minorities would be a priority question for Russia. And he remembered the Minsk agreements, telling that Russia, with these agreements, wanted to create justice in this field, not only with the Hungarians, of course, but with Russia population, very more important in Ukraine, but also with other minorities living in Ukraine in large number. Another important question that he touched in this interview, to my opinion, was the so-called support for Trump. He told about Biden that he probably not was conscious what was happening around him, not only because of his age, but probably with the losing force he is facing. And he told that with Trump, he was agreeing in many important questions. And Trump has never attacked morally and verbally Russia. In contrary with Biden, who named a killer the Russian president. So he told that, of course, he wanted not to interfere in the domestic affairs of the United States, but he waited that in America, the good sense would return and would conduce the United States to an agreement with Russia for continuing to live in peace together. So I think that these questions of world politics and, of course, touching us as Hungarians were for me the most important issues, most important topics that I have read in this interview. Interesting for other sense too. What is your opinion?
Well, I'm the interviewer. You're the interviewee.
Okay.
I'm gonna put my opinion out there on Sunday night. I'll say this: I was very happy to watch and read at the same time the transcript. But I would like you to give me your opinion on Tucker Carlson. As you probably know, he has been crucified and castigated in the United States. He's been called a traitor. He's been accused of treason. High-ranking officials in the government would like to have him arrested, not allowed to return to the United States. They've called him an asset of the Kremlin. They have called him just about everything that they could call him. But I would like to know, and I'm curious to know, what you and other European people think about him, how they judged him in his conduct of this interview with the president of Russia. What would you say about Tucker Carlson? Did you think he did a good job?
Yes, I think he did. But it is not necessary to be Tucker Carlson to be named and defined traitor and enemy of the democracy and so on, and be an agent of the Kremlin and so on. It is enough to be Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, a member of NATO and the EU, because he doesn't agree with the pro-war policy of EU and NATO. So I think that, as you see, you too, there is a great problem of democracy and free opinions. I never thought in my life that Western democracies arrived to the point to define traitor people who want to inform correctly and openly the public opinion over the position and over the minds of a little country like as Russia. And I think that this is absolutely good to open the eyes of the people. And let's see that there is something with the health of the democracy in Western countries. And it may be that democracy in this situation is not more a priority question for the leadership, for the elite of the so-called collective West, because the consideration of power overcome the guarantees of democratic rights. It is a very, very dangerous situation, but I think that it is showing the limitations of the Western democracies, and we see that the system, the existence of the maintainment of the system, the social system, the political system of the Western countries for the elite and for the financial capital is very, very most important than any democratic rights and press freedom. And this is, for me, the most important in this interview, that Tucker Carlson, knowing what the leadership in America and in other NATO countries consider of him, assumed the responsibility to interview a so-called enemy and present correctly the opinion of a people, of a leader who is a leader of a country which during World War II has lost more than 20 million of people and doesn't want more wars, doesn't want more sacrifices. He really wants to live in peace with the world, but he is demanding the recognizing and the legitimations in international laws of the security guarantees formulated in the famous draft of treaty of 15 December 21 and refused immediately and definitely by Washington and Brussels. So I agree with you that this is an important interview permitting to Western peoples to enlarge the political vision and the information size, and not only hear and see the propaganda of the mainstream media.
Oh, well, I obviously agree with you. What I will say about this interview at this point, Tucker Carlson accomplished what he said he wanted to accomplish before the interview, televised. Anybody could see it and listen to it. It's all over the place. It's on YouTube. It's on his website. It was on RT. And basically what he said was the American media had been lying to the American public about what was going on in Ukraine. And he said he wanted to come to Russia to give President Putin the opportunity to present his side of what happened there.
Yeah.
And I think he accomplished that. I saw a lot of people criticizing him. Why didn't you ask him about 9/11? Why didn't you ask him about COVID? Why didn't you ask him about all these other questions? But that is not what the existential question is and has been for the last 2 years, 10 years, which is Ukraine. And that Russia has been blamed for that. And it's been all one-sided, as Tucker said. And he wanted to give Putin the chance to present his side. What I think about, not the content, that'll be for later discussion as far as I'm concerned. But I think that Tucker Carlson asked Putin the important questions, the same ones I would have asked. And I think he was respectful in listening and not interrupting Putin, not trying to score points with a soundbite or I gotcha. He let Putin speak. He did interject on several occasions, asking him to explain or further clarify, which I would have done the same thing. So I have to congratulate him on articulating ahead of time his purpose, and he fulfilled it. People can agree or disagree with what Putin said, but all Tucker wanted to do was have people hear it. And with the millions of views that he's obviously got on YouTube, on his website, on Twitter, and God knows where else, because it's been retweeted all over the place, he's gotten the attention of millions of people. And I don't think anybody in any mainstream media anywhere can claim that. So that's my opinion on what I thought about it. I thought it was a historic and epic interview that people will be discussing, I think, for many months and many years ahead. Okay. Do you want to say anything else?
It is important to continue publicly with a peaceful dialogue. And because between the states, between the US and Russia, there is no direct communication. Tucker was told by Putin on this. Since the congratulation Putin formulated for Biden after his election as president of the United States, the contact between them finished. Not because Putin didn't want to maintain this contact, but because Biden has decided to conduce a different policy and continue with the enlargement of NATO to east. And I think that this dialogue between Tucker and Putin is important to bridge this gap, this political gap also, and to let us understand to public and leadership that there exist other ways, peaceful ways, and ways of cooperation. I think so.
Well, I want to thank you for your analysis. And by the way, I have to compliment you on your English. You were concerned in the beginning that your English was not so good. Your English is perfectly understandable and grammatically correct. And I'm not trying to blow smoke here. I'm very sincere, and anybody who's watching this will have no trouble understanding your perfect English. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. That's the reason. It is the reason I am here now. For your congratulations.
Yes. So let's get now to Hungary. And are you the president of the Hungarian Peace Association? Are you the coordinator? What is your position, first of all? And then I'm going to ask you a couple of questions.
I am the president of the Peace Community of Hungary and the founder of the Hungarian Social Forum. So the Hungarian Social Forum has created the Peace Community of Hungary, and the Peace Community of Hungary last year has created the Forum for Peace, a larger coalition, including also political parties, and in the fight for peace and supporting the peace policy of Prime Minister Viktor Orban. I think that at this point you will put your questions because the situation has changed a little bit.
Okay. So first of all, I wanted to establish your position in the Hungarian peace community. You mentioned plural communities. Are there other peace groups that you've brought together? How large is this coalition?
This coalition is including now more or less 12 organizations and political parties and many individuals. We are organizing demonstrations and conferences. A week ago, we have organized a conference with the Palestinian ambassador here in Hungary, offering him a channel of communication because Hungarian press, the mainstream media, doesn't want to listen the opinion of the Palestinians. And the Hungarian government has taken a unilateral position with supporting Israel and recognizing the right for self-defense of Israel. As we know, this self-defense means actually 27,000 dead. It's incredible. Netanyahu refusing the creation of an independent state of Palestine. And we have, frankly speaking, from the other side, there are many extremisms too. And these extremisms meet each others and don't less space to a peaceful solution of the conflict. One of the leaders of Hamas 2 weeks ago has told that Israel is part of the future Palestinian state. It is not a question of two states, independent states, living together in peace and cooperation. So in this conference, the opinion of the Community for Peace was to tell frankly and sincerely that we are for the two-state solution. We don't want the elimination by the Palestinians of Israel. And we don't want, from Israeli side, the elimination of the Palestinians, which are conducing, which are making actually. So this was an important conference with an important echo. Today I have participated at the Iranian National Day reception at the Iranian Embassy in Budapest. I have had a good conversation with Russian ambassador in Hungary, Stanislavov, and with the Apostolic Nuncius of the Holy See. And, this is a very slow process, but measuring something new. And slowly we are going towards a new political solution, towards a new world of cooperation. But we have to have very more patience and very more tolerance. But we have to fight for this. In Ukraine, in the Middle East, and so on. And I have spoken also with the ambassador of South Africa, and I have invited him to give a conference in our community over the BRICS cooperation of because this is very important for us in Hungary to maintain an equilibrium, a balance between East and West, because we are actually absolutely limited by NATO and the European Union in our sovereignty, let me tell, in our independence. So we are fighting for to survive and to have good relations, to be permitted to have good relations with Russia, with China, with South America, with Brazil, and so on. This is our problem.
Well, Endre, I really appreciate your comments about your peace community working for peace in Israel and Palestine. That has turned the world's attention away from what's going on in Ukraine, but the two are connected. And the United States is behind both of those. If the United States would stop funding Israel, that would end very quickly. Likewise, if the United States, as Putin said in the interview, how do you stop the war and get peace in Ukraine? Stop sending them money and weapons. So the United States is complicit in all of this. And I appreciate what you were saying about BRICS. And then you mentioned sovereignty. Now, I'd like to talk to you now about sovereignty. In my opinion, and it's my opinion, and I'm holding fast to it, I think Brussels, all of these unelected people, and several elected people in individual countries have betrayed the people and their countries and have given up their sovereignty, have given up their history, have given up their money system, and have given up their right to make decisions. I wonder if you would agree with that. And that's going to lead to what I really wanted to talk to you about tonight. President Orban, Prime Minister Orban, was saying, I don't want to give any more money and I'm going to hold up this next payment of money to Ukraine. And he was threatened, in my opinion, that if he did that, Hungary would not get billions of dollars of aid from the EU, and the EU would even deny Hungary the opportunity for a voice in the EU in future voting. Now, to me, that's a denial of Hungary's sovereignty. I'd like your thoughts on what I just mentioned.
Yes. Unfortunately, Orban, our Prime Minister, did not draw strength from the Hungarian stand for peace, but surrendered to the European Union's blackmail. On February 1st, at the Brussels summit of EU, he voted to accelerate the delivery of missiles, artillery shells, and ammunition for the Ukrainian armed forces, to increase the production of the European military industry, and to create a military dimension for the European Union. The final declaration of the EU summit writes that the EU is ready to support Ukraine as long as necessary. Our Prime Minister has signed this declaration. We consider that by this he made an undesirable concession to the pro-war Western European powers, namely to France and Germany. Starting from the national consultation result, which authorized the government to pursue a peace policy against Brussels' war policy, we put the question, why this black sliding? Why did he deceive his voters, telling them that Hungary does not dance as Brussels whistles? Why did he cheat people wanting to strengthen Hungary's sovereignty in the Western alliance system and to build a relationship with the East? We came to the conclusion that, using a sports expression, the flyweight couldn't handle the heavyweight. Macron and Scholz put Orban on two shoulders. They threatened him that if he again vetoed Ukraine's financial and military support, political and economic sanctions would be imposed on Hungary. Among other things, its rights to vote in the European Council would be revoked, and the 20 billion euros due to Hungary would be transferred to Ukraine. According to some, it was even possible to freeze certain bank current accounts. Who knows? It is certain, Regis, that Orban overestimated his opportunities in the EU. He believed that the democracy of the Union is based on the equality of the states, and that Hungary has the same right to speak and even decide on issues of world political significance as Berlin and Paris. He had to realize that this was not the case. The interest in power to maintain the system overrides the interest in democracy, as I was telling before. The conditions are set by the strongest, by the center, and the others have to choose but to accept or bear the consequences if they pursue an independent sovereign policy. It is clear for me that Hungary's sovereignty is limited. It is limited by our membership in NATO and the EU, as it was limited by our membership in the Warsaw Pact at the time. But while within the framework of the Warsaw Pact, Hungary played an initiating role in the reconciliation of East and West in the 70s and facilitated the establishment of the European Security and Cooperation System within the framework of the Helsinki process. Our Western allies now want to prevent the birth of a new European cooperation that would recognize Russia's legitimate security needs and would order NATO back behind its original borders. The center is terrified of the mere thought of Eastern Europe breaking away from the Western alliance system and embarking on the path of neutrality. Of course, Orban expects now that this year's European Parliament elections will bring about a political change in favor of the peace supporters. It can be he wanted to buy time, probably. After all, we can see an increasing disillusionment with the liberal social democratic war policy, not only in Hungary, but also in Western Europe. However, Orban should see that the will of the voters is one thing, and the other thing is what is forced on the people by the background power, that certain financial capital, which is exempt from all kinds of democratic control. Putin also told Tucker about this problem in the United States. As long as Hungary remains a member of NATO, our peace will not be decided by ourselves, but by others. This is also proven by the policy of the European Union, which declared the victory of Ukraine against Russia as a strategic interest of the community. And Viktor Orban undertook the unundertakeable. Here we are now.
Wow. I have to ask you this. From where I sit, and, I'm living in Russia. I'm not in the United States anymore, and I don't read or watch any of the mainstream media. I don't watch anything, no television here. And so I'm really not aware directly of what's being said there and what's happening. But from where I sit, it is clear to me that it is the United States that is dictating to the EU and to NATO its interest, its needs, and its desires. To me, it seems perfectly clear that two things: the sanctions that America has forced the EU to agree to on Russia have backfired on America and have backfired horribly across the EU.
Absolutely.
Second of all, blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. Putin addressed this, and he addressed it not eloquently, bluntly. When Tucker said, "Who did it?" Putin said, "You did." And by you, he meant, and he said, the CIA. The only ones who had the motive and the capability, the United States of America, and the CIA being a rogue deep state agency, which basically conducts its own business without any oversight. So when I look at that and I see what's been happening in Ukraine and how Europe has been forced, NATO has been forced to take part in this, while at the same time losing their sovereignty and destroying their economy. Germany is the perfect example. I'm wondering, do you think, given the massive uprisings of people across Europe, the farmers in Brussels and Germany and the yellow vest in Paris, these uprisings are happening all over. People are discontented with what is happening to their countries economically, politically, and I think globally. I'd like your thoughts, and I'd like your thoughts on this. Do you see the EU and NATO developing huge cracks or fissures in its unity?
I think that EU became a tool of the United States and partially of NATO too. It is losing the community sense of an economical and partially political cooperation community. And it is losing the sense of reality because it doesn't know clearly the changements in the world, the changements in the relation of force, military and economical forces, the uprising of East and the declining of West. But I think that it's too early to talk about a collapse. The EU is in the process of decay, but it is still has reserves. Due to its worsening economic and social problems, its global economic and political weight is gradually decreasing. It is striking that he does not have in mind the interests of his people to progress, but the interests of the elite to power. The elites fear that they will lose their hegemony if they come to terms with Russia. But the people are beginning to realize that their well-being is not threatened by Russia, but by their own elites. One can only guess how this will end. I think that we have to wait the maturation of the Western European public opinion and European peoples better than ever. The faster the awakening and the demand for compromise, the sooner the war in Ukraine can end, and both sides of Europe can flourish as the natural relationship can be restored. But we have more time, and we were told by the military attaché of Russia some weeks ago in our circle that very probably this war will continue this year. So why? Because if not US, NATO continue weaponing Zelensky regime, giving money to him, and by this continue the war and postpone the peaceful settlement. I hope that maybe at the elections in the United States, something new will succeed, and maybe Trump will realize his promise given to his people that he will end this war in 24 hours. How will do it? How does it? How does he? I don't know. But if the orientation, if the disponibility is real, I think that he will meet partnership from Russian side, and maybe that in a few time this will maturing success, worldwide success, by ending this war and sitting at the table to make a new European and world compromise on new basis, not on NATO basis. A new basis recognizing the indivisibility of the security and refusing the political and the military practice actually existing from Western side, that they don't recognize that the enlargement of NATO, to continue the enlargement of NATO to east and to assure his own security at the expense of Russia and also of China. More time, my friend.
Well, Putin told his American audience, and I'll tell you what, Anthony Blinken, Kirby, Sullivan, Austin, I don't know if Trump even knew what was going on, but they were all listening. Everybody in the CIA were listening to that talk. I can guarantee you that. And he made it very clear. You want to stop this? We can stop it quickly. Stop funding it. He made it clear to NATO and to all of the EU. Stop funding this in Ukraine. It's obviously they don't want to stop it because, as he said, their goal was to take down Russia, to balkanize it, steal its resources like they've done, the United States has done for its entire history all over the world. Now, Donald Trump, I don't think Putin has a lot of hope in whoever is elected president, because as he said, these presidents are only managers or spokespersons for, again, the deep state and the big financial interests. And so, as an American living in Russia who's given up on the political process, I don't believe there's any hope in changing anything in America until it collapses. To me, it doesn't matter. I think we're observing another electoral cycle that's a carnival, that's a circus, that is meant to distract and entertain the people. But whoever's going to be there in November will not be elected. That person has already been selected.
I understand your preoccupation, Regis, but there is a proverb in Hungary telling, hope is dying last. So we are human beings.
I have hope. I have hope. And you mentioned it briefly in the beginning, in BRICS and this emerging new multipolar world, a new world order without an American hegemon. I have hope in that. And as you and I both know, the leading champion of that movement, spokesperson, has been Vladimir Putin. Nobody has articulated it like Putin, what this means for the future order of the world, for collaboration, shared development, dialogue, not conflict.
Yes. A
I think
new world order.
Yeah, not Klaus Schwab's new world order, but this new world order that I think is developing. I have one last question for you before we conclude. I know that in many places across Europe and around the world, people are rising up against the governments that they know does not have their interest in heart. How would you describe how the people in Hungary feel about their government, about Orban, about their needs not being taken care of because they've abdicated to Brussels? What are your thoughts on how the people there feel?
I think that the absolute majority of my people want to live in peace and to maintain good relationship with both East and West. You know that we are in the center of Europe between two fires. And we want, as little country with 10 million of people, to live in peace and stability and to develop. Our commerce is exchanged in 80% with EU. And on the other side, our energy resources are coming from Russia for 80% too. What can we do? We have to maintain good relations with both. It's a question of life. And this offers the possibility, the opportunity to Hungary to do something for the bridge between East and West, for remember and re-edit the experience of the Helsinki process of 70s. I think that there is inside of the policy of Orban the opportunity to go forward with this neutralizing policy. But he is going against walls, and it is not possible to go always forward because my head finish to the wall. So this concession from one side is badly accepted by Hungarian public, but there exists also a comprehension that we have limitations. We have our sovereignty limited. And this offers to the public that we need to go towards a neutrality, not to participate always to one or other military blocs. Warsaw Pact does not exist more. NATO exists, and we are inside, unfortunately. And I think that the decision is not in the hands of Hungary, is not in the hands of our people who understands in some kind the position of the government, but the solution is in the hand of Russia, and the solution is in Ukraine. If Ukraine becomes neutral, demilitarized, and denazified, this will have immediate consequence on the life and gives on the life of Eastern Europe, and will give new opportunities to enlarge our freedom of movement, political movement. So I think that the process is going toward this new situation, but it is necessary to pass more time, and it is necessary to convince the NATO and EU leadership to seize the weaponization of Zelensky regime. We see big controversies inside of the leadership of Ukraine, and it gives hope that also a political change could be verified in Kiev and offer an opportunity to achieve a peaceful solution with the new leadership with Russia. So we depend from these great political fights, and we push as Community for Peace of Hungary to achieve this goal. We are very interested in the neutralization of Ukraine for our own interest.
One more question, Andre. A big question. Are you, and do you think the people of Ukraine, of Europe, across Europe, are they afraid really that Russia is going to attack them? That Russia is this evil empire desiring entity? What are your thoughts on that before we quit?
I think seeing and following the logics and the minding of Russian leadership and of President Putin, and conversating with representatives here in Hungary of Russia, that they exclude a confrontation with NATO, a military confrontation. I am not afraid of the military intervention of Russia in Western Europe or against any NATO country. No. I think that the leadership of EU and NATO, and the American leadership too, is threatening the Western peoples artificially, and describing this monster as threatening democracy, human rights, freedoms, and so on. But I think that if people have some brain in the head, I can see that it is not Russia to go to the border of the United States threatening the survival and the existence of the American people. But it is United States and NATO who is at the borders of Russia. what is seeking for there? What? This is not kind of friendship. So Russia has the right to self-defense. And I am sure that Russia will not given the opportunity to NATO to include Ukraine in his ranks. There are other countries also, Moldova and Georgia, who declared his desire to enter NATO. But I think that if NATO is going in this sense, new hot points, new hotbeds could create in Europe. Not in Western Europe, but here in Eastern Europe. But this could have important, dangerous consequences also to NATO countries. In economical sense, political sense, obvious, and this could create a new military confrontation situation. This has to be avoided. This is the most important problem of the moment, and it is not the threatening, the artificial threatening of the Western leadership against the danger of attack and occupation by Russian military forces of Western Europe or solely Eastern Europe. I don't feel this danger. Of course, I don't feel this because our government up to now has followed a peace policy with Russia inside of NATO and the EU. I hope that other peoples and other leaderships, after the elections with the European Parliament and national elections, will follow our example. Because this is the only way to go to the table of the negotiations to achieve a new compromise, successful for all of us, for both East and West.